Hi, everybody. This is Shri, and welcome back to my channel, Vedic Living. Today, I want to talk to you about the chart of J.D. Vance, who is the vice president nominee for President Trump in the US elections this year. I know a lot of you are not from the United States, so this might be something that you're not interested in, but you do know that I don't talk about the political side so much because I'm not affiliated to any of that. For me, this is all about astrology. I like to look at the charts of any celebrities, anybody who comes in the news, just to learn astrology from a research standpoint. When you apply the aspects and the transits in a person's chart and you see events happening, it proves the power of astrology to me. And not that I need any proof, but as a part of our learning process, the research is so incredibly important. So just as you know, for Donald Trump, on July 13th, there was this event where there was an attempt on his life. And 2 weeks before that, in the video that I made right before this video, you would have noticed I did talk about that because that was a very clear indicator. The Mars-Uranus conjunction happened exactly on the point, which is called his midheaven, which is the career indicator of a person, plus it's the public image. Mars rules violence. Uranus is sudden, unexpected events. And this conjunction happened exactly at that 2-degree mark on July 13th. And of course, when I talked about it, I said the second week of July between the 12th and the 17th. But we always use that orb because we don't know how accurate a person's birth time is. But, for him, it was exact. And it happened on the fixed star Algol. And remember, when we talk about fixed stars, they are called fixed for a reason, right? They hardly move. They are like many, many years, they are at the same position. So the fixed star Algol is around the 2 to 3 degree mark of Taurus. And the mythology of the fixed star Algol is Perseus beheading Medusa. And if you think about, that's the reason why when we look at Algol or when we see major transits happening around that part of the zodiac, around 2 to 3 degrees. And remember, when we talk about fixed stars, the conjunction has to be exact. We can't say just because it's in the sign of Taurus, it's going to happen. It has to be exactly at that 2 to 3 degree mark of Taurus. And, the idea of beheading, it can be literal, but most of the time it's people losing their minds. There's anger, there's rage, there's, this uncontrolled emotion that is happening, which is what we see when there are major transits. Now, if somebody has planets at that point, for example, in former President Donald Trump's chart, he has midheaven, which is a very sensitive point in a person's chart. It is the person's public image is at that point. That is why, when he's in his career, when he is speaking, he always has this tone of anger because that's the idea of Algol. It's Perseus beheading Medusa. It's that anger, that rage. So you can see that typically in his life to begin with, because his midheaven is at that point. But when there are transits on that, it triggers events, especially Mars. Mars is a trigger planet. And that's what happened on July 13th. So this is, again, the research standpoint of this is what I'm really interested in because it proves the power of astrology. Now, if somebody came to you before this event and said, hey, I have a rally in that time frame or on that date, you would probably, as an astrologer, see this happening and be able to warn them that, this is not a great time to do this because Mars and Uranus are exactly at that 2-degree mark. They're coming conjunct. See, now these are all very rare things, right? Mars can come there once every 2 years, approximately. But the fact that Uranus is there and Mars and Uranus are conjunct, and that conjunction point is the 2-degree mark of Taurus, it's extremely rare. So having a planet there will trigger an event in that person's life, right? So that's why, this is such an important thing that we need to pay attention to. So, well, that event happened. And of course, thankfully, nothing major happened. A couple of people did lose their lives. And of course, our thoughts and prayers are with them at all times because it was a very tragic event. Okay. But The reason I'm doing this video is in the convention in the past few days, Donald J. Trump announced his vice presidential candidate. This has been a highly awaited kind of thing among us astrologers, because whenever we look at whether somebody is going to lose in an election or win in an election, it is good to look at all the people involved, right? So if you remember, I did my election series a few months ago where I looked at pretty much all the candidates. And I said, okay, here is my verdict, looking at their charts, what I think is going to happen. So when another person got thrown into this, which is J.D. Vance, the senator, a US senator, as the vice president of Trump, I thought, you know what? We need to look at his chart to see if things are lining up. And oh my God, it is an amazing lineup that is happening between J.D. Vance's chart and Donald Trump's chart, between J.D. Vance's chart and the United States chart. And another lineup that is happening is on the election day chart. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about. So I'm going to share my screen and talk about these connections. And all of you who are interested in astrology, I hope you learn from this and you take something away from this video. Again, this has no political motivations. If it was anybody else who came out in the news, I would have done these videos. This is purely from a research standpoint. So here's a chart of J.D. Vance, and he's a US senator, like I said, and he has been nominated as the vice presidential candidate for Donald Trump in the elections that are happening in November. So the first thing I have here on the left side is J.D. Vance's chart, and I have Donald Trump's chart on the right side. What we are going to do is we are going to look at the connections between both the charts to see, do these people work well with each other? Now, let me explain something to you about compatibility. A lot of my clients ask me when they see the relationship compatibility reading on my website, is this just for romantic relationships? Absolutely not. You can look at the compatibility between two people in various kinds of things in life. If you are going to go into business with them, if you are going to, of course, have a romantic relationship with them, compatibility can be checked. You can check compatibility if somebody's going to be a roommate. You can check compatibility if you're going to travel with somebody. There are various relationships, one-on-one relationships, where you can check the compatibility between two individuals, because it will tell us how easygoing or how many challenges there are in that relationship, right? Of course, every relationship is going to have some problem or the other, but the more easygoing aspects there are, the easier it is to kind of navigate the challenges, okay? So that's why I wanted to look at the charts of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump to see what the connections here are. Now, let me first, kind of preface this by saying that for J.D. Vance, I did not know what the time of birth was. My teacher, Joni Patri, gave me the time. She is my teacher, and I respect her beyond any other person. So this is definitely something I want to thank my teacher for. But I think Joni also got it from Steve Stuckey, who is a very amazing astrologer. So I do want to thank these individuals for providing this time of birth, because I would not have had any access to it if not for them. Okay. All right. So let's look at his chart. August 2nd, 1984, 8:11 a.m. in Middletown, Ohio. He is a Leo rising individual, and this is amazing. Look at that. His ascendant 4 degrees of Leo, Magha Nakshatra. Look at Donald Trump. 6 degrees, 51 minutes of Leo, Magha Nakshatra, Mars, and ascendant. They both have planets or ascendant in Magha Nakshatra. What is Magha? It's rulership. It's the throne. It's the crown, right? And Magha by itself, of course, the whole slogan of the Trump campaign is Make America Great Again, which I don't know if he had an astrologer when he picked that, but it's just an incredible coincidence that his ascendant is in Magha along with Mars, the planet of action. And Mars is the Yoga Karaka for both Trump and Vance, right? So the fact that it's in Magha Nakshatra is incredible. Now, another thing about Magha is that around this place in Leo, around 5 to 6 degrees of Leo, which J.D. Vance has his ascendant at 4 degrees of Leo, and Trump has his ascendant and Mars around 3 to 6 degrees of Leo. Around 5 degrees of Leo, we have another fixed star. This is the star called Regulus, the star that is kingship, rulers, kings. Regulus is, in the constellation of Leo, when you look at the lion in the sky, Regulus is the heart of the lion. And you know what I found interesting is after this shooting event last Saturday, a lot of news agencies and interviewers and people on the media have been coming out saying the way that Trump came out and he put his fist in the air is because he has the heart of a lion. Again, I don't know if they know astrology or they've seen this in his chart or they're just saying it because that's a way of speaking. Heart of a lion shows courage. But the nakshatra Maga is placed as the heart of the lion in the constellation in the sky. So they do have a lot of courage and bravery, and they are very action oriented, and they do have rulership, kingship kind of tendencies in their chart. They will always end up in a leadership position. And it's impossible for everybody who has Regulus to be a leader or a king, right? It just means that if you're working in a company, you could be the CEO of the company. If you're working in any kind of corporate setting, you'll end up being the supervisor or the manager. It's always a ruling tendency because they are incredibly inspiring and they have great leadership qualities. People want to follow them. That's what it means. So one point of connection you see right off the bat between these two charts, it's a very good connection. They do understand each other's mindset. They want to make deals. They want to rule the country, and they want to do things that are good and inspiring for the people. You can see that. Now, the next thing that I see here as a connection right off the bat is the Venus. You can see that both their Venus is sitting in the 12th house, Venus being the ruler of the 10th house of career for Leo rising for both of them. And the ruler of the 10th house of career going into the 12th house does show political aspirations. A lot of politicians have 12th house planets very, crucially placed. Either the ruler of the ascendant goes into the 12th, or the ruler of the 10th goes into the 12th. And for JD Vance, in fact, his chart ruler goes into the 12th too. So he is more of a politically inspired person than Trump. I think maybe because Trump didn't really, start in politics. He was a businessman. But JD Vance, you can see there are multiple indicators here of being successful in politics. Very nice. So you can see that as a connection between both the charts. Another connection right here is to show that these two individuals, even though they are born almost 40 years apart from each other, okay, not on the same time, they were born almost 40 years apart. Look at their nodes. The nodes Rahu and Ketu are exactly in the same sign, not to the degree, but it's in the same sign for both of them. Amazing. Because here's the thing, wherever the nodes are placed, and you will see this in your family too, between parents and children, between siblings, you'll see the nodes connected. What that means is a karmic relationship. There is something that these two individuals are supposed to come together to do, and that's past life karma. There's something here. So, and when you have these nodal connections, you feel attracted to each other too. So out of this pool of candidates, I'm pretty sure that this particular individual stood out to Trump for whatever reason. There is just a very divine kind of reason why two people come together when the nodes are together. And this you will see a lot in romantic relationships. When you see somebody and you feel this instant sense of recognition and familiarity, it is a nodal connection. Okay, so there you go. Another connection. Now, the Rahu in both the charts are in the 10th house. Rahu in the 10th house gives great success in career. Now, Trump has his sun and Rahu there, but both have Rahu there in the 10th house. So, high positions, Rahu gives very high positions in career, elevated positions as, rulers and kings and such. So they both have that again. So that's another connection. Now, another interesting thing that I saw here is that the Mercury in JD Vance's chart falls exactly on Trump's ascendant. So this means that he will be open to debating concepts with Trump. Mercury is about communicating, debating, connecting with each other. And he will not be like, standing against Trump and something. He will debate it with him. He'll say, hey, I like your idea, but this is what I think, and I think we should do it this way. And they will be open to debating with each other. So that's the Mercury on the ascendant kind of connection. So that's also beautiful. There is, let me look at this. What other connections are there? Now, JD Vance does have, now not looking at Trump's chart, but just looking at JD Vance's chart, and that Ketu in the 4th house can show difficulty for the mother when JD was a child, which he did have. His mother went through a lot of difficult situations with addictions and such, and Ketu in the 4th house, the mother can almost feel like she doesn't know who she is or what she's supposed to do here. There can be a sense of loss in self, and then you have to find yourself, right? So now she's fine, she's doing good. But in his childhood, there was definitely issues there. And from the moon, you can see there are 3 malefics in the 2nd house from the moon. That does show when 2nd house is your early childhood experience. So 3 malefics from the 2nd house does show a difficult childhood. He did have a very difficult childhood. I think the family moved around a lot. He moved around a lot. And it was not an easy life. But the Saturn is exalted, and another very strong indicator here is that his Yoga Karaka Mars is sitting with Saturn. And I've talked about this in the past when I did Michelle Obama's chart and Jeff Bezos' chart. A lot of very successful people have the Saturn-Mars connection. And that Saturn-Mars connection gives them the willpower to make things happen in life, right? They have, no matter how many times life puts them down, they always stand back up to fight. So you will see the Saturn-Mars connection in charts of people who have had tough lives, yes, but this is the conjunction that gives them the ability and the resilience and the strength to overcome those problems and become successful. So, and for him, it is his Yoga Karaka planet Mars, and Saturn is also there, which is exalted. So he does have the ability to overcome problems and challenges in life. And he did. If you see his biography, he had a very tough life when he was growing up. So this is definitely, another point here that you can see. Plus, the Saturn that is exalted rules his 7th house of relationship partner, and his wife is very supportive in whatever he wants to do. And you can see that in his biography and everywhere, that his wife has always been very supportive. The ruler of the 7th house is exalted. Now, his wife can be very disciplining and organized too, with Saturn being the ruler of the 7th house. But I think that is something that he probably kind of needs in his life too, right? Two people get attracted to each other because they need those energies in their life. So he does need that. But, he does have Moon in Virgo. He is also a very organized kind of person. But I think his wife is also very Saturnian, which means hardworking and resilient. And, Saturn people can be a little serious when you talk to them. They can be very serious, but they are also like, when you call people the salt of the earth, that's the kind of people they are. They are very real. They're down to earth, very real. They understand real people's challenges. Saturn is basically what rules middle class, hardworking people. So I understand why this person is required in this campaign, because he does have these indications in his chart that show that he understands what the working class people are going through, because that is what Saturn is, working class people. And Saturn is exalted in his chart. So he does have that. But being in the 2nd place from the moon, yes, he had a tough life when he was growing up. It was not an easy life, okay? The next thing I want to look at here is the connection between JD Vance's chart and United States chart. So on the right side is United States chart. And again, right off the bat, you see so many connections here. I mean, the very first thing I noticed is the Jupiter right on United States ascendant. This is good. This is a ruler or a person who really wants to do good for the country, right? Whenever that Jupiter comes there. But the Jupiter is also opposing all these planets in United States 7th house, which means that it's opposing the opponents. So he has good ideas on how to fix the problems the country is facing. Okay, so that's good for his chart. Now, in any country's chart, the 10th house is the ruler. United States has Saturn in the 10th house, which tells us that the ruler is very hardworking. But when you have planets coming here in a person's chart, it does show a connection again. So right off the bat, you see Moon in JD Vance's chart is exactly in United States 10th house, which is good. Moon shows that you understand, you empathize with the country. You want to solve the problems of the country. Moon is all about helping, right? It's about nurturing and helping. So when it comes in the 10th house of a country's chart, the leader wants to help people, okay? And then you see Rahu right here in JD Vance's chart is aspecting the 10th house Saturn as well in United States chart, which means, it is uplifting that Saturn. Saturn in the 10th can be a little tough for the ruler of the country, but the Rahu is amplifying it, which is a good thing. Now, from a Gemini standpoint, if you want to look at this chart, the Jupiter sitting in Sagittarius in JD Vance's chart just aspect all the corner houses. So it will aspect all the 4 7th house planets in United States chart and the 10th house. So it does have good aspects on all these planets from the Jupiter in his chart. So there is definitely an indication that this person could do good for the country. And another thing is United States has that Mercury Rahu in the 8th house, which can sometimes cause problems with communications and breakdowns and such things. But he has Venus coming here, right? JD Vance is putting a Venus here in United States 8th house, which is again a good aspect. It is kind of making it softer in that 8th house. So I think that's a great aspect right there. This is actually a very good chart for connections in between it. I don't see any exact conjunctions, but I do see the planets falling in good and amicable houses, which is a good thing. All right, the next thing we are going to look at is the election day chart to see if the election day chart is supporting this person in winning this race or in having a positive outcome. So right away, the fact that you have Jupiter sitting in Taurus on election day is again an amazing thing in this chart, because this Jupiter is aspecting JD Vance's Moon in his 2nd house of money and finances and wealth, which usually means if it's a regular person, it usually means the person is getting promoted at work or getting a bonus or a raise or something. In his case, he's running for an election. So this is actually indicating a new job that is coming his way, which is good. Jupiter by itself is sitting in his 10th house of career, which does show growth in the career. And above all that, it is sitting on his nodes, which brings a destiny kind of flavor to this whole thing. So this is what he's destined to do. He's meant to do this. This is a very good aspect. I do think this will bring a win for this individual in the election. Another thing I also noticed is the Jupiter being in the 10th house for JD Vance is aspecting his 4th house, indicating that he might move or change his home, which he may have to if he wins, right? So there is definitely a move in residence happening. So that's another indicator that I saw. Now, on the election day, debilitated Mars is sitting in Cancer in JD Vance's 12th house. So that may be a little bit of a stressful aspect for him. He may be a little stressed, or he may feel like he wants to do certain things he's not able to. He may feel frustrated. There may be some fear around violence and things like that, because Mars is debilitated on election day. And we know that the month of October, November, and December this year is going to be incredibly volatile for United States. I'll be looking at specific dates to give you the dates as to which will be really volatile. But when you look at election day, the debilitated Mars does indicate that there is anger in the world. People are not happy about the outcome. And that debilitated Mars sits on JD Vance's Sun, indicating, and that is his chart ruler. So there is some fear around whether there can be violence and such things. So, he may have those thoughts in his mind, or maybe, it might just be the general kind of, feeling at that time among people. So that is definitely not a great aspect. I do see 2 or 3 really positive aspects here, but this one, the Mars one, is not great. Plus Mars does aspect, transiting Mars will aspect his natal Saturn and Mars in the 3rd house of, communication. So he can be a little upset and angry around that time because, 3rd house is how you communicate and express yourself. So this is definitely, Mars is not doing much favor here to this person, okay? Rahu is doing good, I think, being in the 10th house of career rise. Jupiter is doing great, transiting Jupiter is doing great in his chart. And another thing is, transiting Saturn will be in his 7th house, which means his spouse is under some stress. She must be feeling the weight and the stress of this whole election thing, right? So that's definitely the case here. Now, transiting Saturn will also be aspecting his Ketu, not exactly to the degree, but it's in the 4th house. So again, home, where he's living, his family life, everything is under stress around the election time. Maybe because he's working around the clock, maybe because he's always out there, right? So he needs to be careful about this and make sure his spouse and his family have support while he's doing this work. But otherwise, from a career and financial standpoint and indicating the move, I do think that this person can win the election, although it does look very stressful for him. Okay, so that is what I wanted to talk about, JD Vance's chart and the connections I wanted to show you between the United States chart, Donald Trump's chart, and the election state chart. So like I said, I think my verdict is going to be that there is very, very strong indications here for a win, although I do think it's going to be a stressful time for his spouse, his family, and with that Mars being there, he can also be very stressed out, maybe have, Mars transiting Mars in the 12th house means you're not sleeping much, right? 12th house is sleep, and you can be stressed and anxious and angry at various things at that time. So he needs to remember that and remember to be mindful around that time. The time around the election is going to be very volatile because Mars is going into Cancer, back and forth between Gemini and Cancer. I'll make another video on that with specific dates that we need to watch and degree marks that we need to watch and who is going to get affected by it. But that'll be another video that I do want to make for you. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed the research, how we look at charts and see the compatibility between people and places and countries and such. And I'll come back to you next time with another very interesting video. So thank you so much.